Welcome to the UN Network for Sun webinar on using harmonized individual quantitative food consumption data disseminated through the Global Individual Food Consumption Data Tool, known as FAO WHO GIFT. This is the fourth in the UN Network for Sun webinar series done in collaboration with the SecureNutrition knowledge platform managed by the World Bank Group. My name is Aaron Buxbaum, manager of the World Bank SecureNutrition platform. This webinar is taking place on an application called WebEx, and I will describe a few features before the presenters begin. If you can hear me now, no action is needed. To connect your audio, please use the audio menu near the very top of your screen. When you select Connect My Audio, you will see a box with three options. We suggest selecting the Connect using your computer, which is the bottom option. You may also use a phone to call into the meeting. In that case, you would click the middle option and call the phone number that was indicated on your screen. If you're having trouble connecting on your computer, we suggest closing the WebEx application and simply joining again. You can do this anytime throughout the presentation. If you continue to encounter difficulties, please know we are recording the entire session, and we will share that recording as well as the slides with you afterwards. Again, if you can hear me speaking now, you do not need to take any further action. Please use the chat box to introduce yourself and to ask questions. To open the chat box, look near the top of your screen for a chat icon. Click on it. You will then see a new chat window open near the bottom of your screen at the right. Please select Everyone to send a question or say hello, or you can select Host or my colleague Claudia Tranquilli if you are having technical problems, and we will try our best to assist you. This webinar will run for 1 hour and 30 minutes. Please ask questions in the chat box throughout the webinar, and the presenters will answer these near the end of the session. It is now my pleasure to introduce Lindsay Wise, who is the moderator for today's session. Lindsay is currently the liaison officer at the UN Network for Sun Secretariat, hosted by World Food Program in Rome. She has previously worked with UNICEF and WFP at country and regional levels in Asia and West Africa. She holds an MPH and an MSW from the University of Washington in St. Louis in the United States. Lindsay, if you'd like to come off mute now and take it from here, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction, Aaron. It's my pleasure to be with you today and moderate this interesting webinar in an effort to make knowledge more accessible to a range of nutrition stakeholders around the world. Our speakers today are both from the joint FAO-WHO GIFT team based at FAO headquarters in Rome. Our first speaker, Catherine Leclerc, is an expert in food consumption studies and dietary assessment. She joined the Nutrition and Food Systems Division at FAO headquarters in 2013, where she is leading the work on the FAO-WHO GIFT tool. Catherine was previously a senior researcher at the Center for Research on Food and Nutrition of Italy's Council for Agricultural Research and Analysis of Agricultural Economics. In addition, she has served as an expert of dietary exposure in scientific committees in Europe and at the global level. She is an author of over 50 international peer-reviewed publications related to nutrition surveillance and dietary exposure to food chemicals. Catherine, feel free to say a few additional words about yourself.
Yes, thank you very much. It's Catherine speaking. So probably you can recognize that I'm French from my name, but I speak English with an Italian accent, and this is because I've been living in Italy for 30 years. And it's really very important for us to have this webinar today with the UN Network for Sun, and we are extremely thankful to the team who organized it and invited us to present this tool. Thank you.
Our second speaker, Agnieszka Balcerzak, has been working with the FAO-WHO GIFT team for about 2 years, where she is focusing on the development of simple indicators used in the GIFT platform, as well as on data harmonization and acquisition. Agnieszka brings expertise in nutrition assessment and nutrition-sensitive agriculture and previously worked at the FAO office in Bangladesh, backstopping the nutrition components of FAO projects. She holds a master's degree in agricultural development with a specialization in human nutrition and agricultural economics. Agnieszka, tell us something about yourself.
Thank you very much. Yes, my name is Agnieszka Balcerzak, and I have a very difficult name and a surname because I'm Polish. As I was introduced, I'm a nutritionist, and I also have field experience from Bangladesh, and I combine these two things at my present work with FAO WHO GIFT. And thank you very much for the opportunity of presenting the platform today during the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Agnieszka. Before we delve into the presentation, I'd like to take this opportunity to remind you to type your questions in the chat box, addressing them to everyone at any point during the presentation. My colleagues will gather these questions and address them to the speakers at the end of the presentation. We also kindly remind you to place your microphones on mute for the duration of the webinar to avoid unnecessary background noise while the speakers are presenting and addressing questions. This will enable participants to hear more clearly. As you will recall, the webinar is being recorded, and the recording and presentation slides will be available online after the event. Thank you for joining us, and enjoy the presentation. Catherine, I'd like to hand it over to you now.
Okay, thank you very much. So now I'm going to share my screen in order to illustrate to you first an introduction to the platform, and then Agnieszka will show it to you live, and then I will give some more explanation. So I think you can all see my screen with the title of the presentation. First of all, I would like to introduce the name of our tool, which is FAO WHO GIFT. And it's very important for us to stress that it's a collaborative project between FAO and WHO. The GIFT acronym stands for Global Individual Food Consumption Data Tool. But of course, it's also a very nice acronym conveying a very important message, because with this tool, we are talking about sharing data and sharing those data for free. So I always begin the presentation with this slide, which is about the theory of change, why it's important to provide this kind of data in order to develop food-based approaches. And as you can see on the right-hand side of the slide, when you have health-based indicators describing nutritional deficiency, like for example percentage of the population deficient in vitamin A, and you know this through biomarkers. This is a very useful piece of information, and you also have an easy way to deal with this kind of malnutrition, which is through the provision of supplements. But if we want to deal with malnutrition, and in particular micronutrient deficiency, through biofortification or food fortification, then of course it's important to have health-based indicators. But in addition, we need some food-based indicators of good quality, which tell us the quantity of food consumed. So for example, if you want to add iron to flour, then it's very important to know how much flour is consumed by children, by women, and so we need good age and sex disaggregated data on food consumption to promote this kind of approaches. And if we want to promote diversified diet, and in particular local and biodiverse foods which are rich in key nutrients, then in addition to good quality food consumption data, we also need good local food composition data. So this is a slide to show that we need to invest in collecting and disseminating data in order to promote food-based approaches. So in terms of data that can be used to assess the nutrition adequacy of the diet, you probably all know about food balance sheets, household food consumption surveys, and individual food consumption surveys. The reason why we focus on the third one is because if we don't have information on how food is distributed within the country, and we only have food balance sheets, or if we don't know how food is distributed within the household, because maybe we know that some meat is consumed, but we don't know if it was consumed by the father, by the mother, or by the child. Of course, there is a lot of uncertainty in assessing nutrient intake of individuals. And what we need is really to know what is the nutrient intake of individual with their age, with their sex, so that we can compare it with their nutrient requirements. So for this reason, in this tool, which allows to collate and disseminate food consumption data, we focus exclusively on individual food consumption data. In addition, we focus on quantitative data because we want to be able to assess nutrient intake. So we don't consider surveys which allow to collect information on dietary diversity, and we don't use qualitative survey like qualitative food frequency. We don't use also semi-quantitative food frequency questionnaire because they cannot be repurposed. So for this reason, in this platform, we only disseminate quantitative dietary records and quantitative 24-hour recalls. So this is the home page of the platform, and I just say a few words before giving the floor to Agnieszka in relation to the way we have developed it. So we have been developing this in the last 4 years in a participatory way through webinars where we would really ask to potential end users, both at country level and at global level, what they expected. And the very important feedback we got at an early stage of development is that we should not develop very sophisticated indicators, and we should go to the quick sharing of a lot of data. And the reason is that most policymakers all over the world have a rather low scientific literacy. So we were told it would be better to develop indicators in an infographic style, and that's what we have done. Whereas those who have the means and the need to do some specific analysis prefer to have microdata and do their own analysis. So for this reason, in the platform, there is a download section so that you can download microdata. And so this is really about sharing microdata by data owners. So now I will give the floor to Agnieszka, who will make you have a walk through the platform live.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Now I will replace the mock-up with the actual platform. Okay, now what we are looking at is the platform online. We've been developing for 4 years now, and it was opened the 20th of November, and I'm gonna present to you 3 sections of the platform, which is data sources, indicators, and the download. So we go first to data sources, where you can see a map of individual quantitative food consumption surveys that we have identified around the world based on the literature search, Google search, and another means or through partners, or another means of looking up the existing studies. So it's important to note that these are only studies that are based on individual food consumption on 24-hour recalls data collection, not on the food frequency data. So we started the inventory covering the low and lower middle income countries around the world, and we keep on updating it and expanding to the middle income and high income countries in the future. So what you can see on the map, a part of the bubbles, out of which each has a number, is where are the surveys located and which countries have surveys. So, for example, here you have Ghana that has one survey. The number on the bubbles indicates that it's one survey in Ghana. In Benin, we have 5 surveys. The surveys are entitled in the way that indicates the country, the year of data collection, and then the institution that has or a project that has collected the data. Here you can also see the metadata that is linked to this data set. Metadata is all the information, all the data that actually describes the survey. You can see it briefly here, or you can export it in the form of PDF and have a closer look on what kind of information is available to date about the survey. This metadata information is collected based on existing literature. In some cases, we managed to confirm it with a data owner. So each data set in the survey has a color code. You can see here in Benin we have orange and yellow codes. We also have other data sets that have green codes. For example, in Burkina Faso we have one data set that have green codes. This is because, oh sorry, I closed the window. I have to find it back. This is the presentation, and this is the window. Okay, sorry for the... Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we have 4 color codes which serve as the filters as well. The green one means that the dataset has been already harmonized and uploaded to FAO WHO GIFT. The yellow color code means that the data soon will be inserted in GIFT, so we are already working on harmonization and working with the data owners on having it in the platform. And then the red one means that we have identified this dataset but haven't yet started the work on having it as a part of the tool. So you can see that to date we have 5 data sets available in the platform. That means you can download microdata out of 5 data sets, and you can see indicator based on 5 data sets. We have about 10 data sets in the pipeline that we are working now with the data owners on harmonization, and we have many of data sets that we've identified, and we are working on them, and we will work on them in the future. You can also filter by coverage, so you can see only the data sets that are nationally representative, if only those are of interest for your work. You can also filter by the area. So let's say we are interested only in both urban and rural. So here are the nationally representative urban and rural data sets. So this is the first part of the platform which presents the inventory of existing data worldwide. Now we will move to another part which is called indicators. First thing you have to do when you move to this part is to select one data set that you want to browse, because the indicators are calculated based on one data set only, one data set at the time. You can select the population of interest within the population that has been covered by the survey that you've selected. So let's say you are interested only on female, or only on pregnant and lactating women. You in let's say reproductive age. I think I put too many filters. Yeah, you can select the reproductive age here by age. Maybe that's not reproductive. And this part will update automatically, showing you the outputs only calculated based on the population that you selected. Then we move to the indicators. We have three types of indicators: food consumption, food safety, and nutrition indicators. The first will be first I will present to you the indicator on food consumption. So these are indicators that describe the dietary patterns. You can see here the bubbles, and the bubbles represent food groups, and the size of the bubbles is related to the amount of food consumed in average from these food groups. So you can see on this picture that cereals are the most important food group in the diet of the population that was covered by this survey. So the cereals are consumed in average 566 grams of cereals has been consumed by this population. Vegetables a little bit less. Pulses also quite important food group. You can click in the bubbles, and then you will see the further disaggregation. So you will see what kind of pulses have been consumed. Actually, it's pulses and nuts is the food group. So you have pulses and nuts, almost 50-50. And you can go further down to the food item level to see what particular food items have been consumed. So it's an average number. That's why we have a very small numbers, because maybe there were very few people in the population consume these particular foods. The same information is presented as a percentage as per 100 gram, as well as calories. So the average sources of the average contribution to the total energy intake of different food groups by food group. And similarly, you can go to further disaggregation levels. Now I will present to you the food safety indicator. The food safety indicator, to use the food safety indicator, you should first select the food that you're interested in, and then to see the distribution of consumption of this particular food. So, for example, we may be interested in the consumption of nuts and seeds in this population, because we know that there is a risk that related to some contamination in this particular food group. So, firstly, you will look at the percentage of population that actually consumed this food on the survey day. We see that 76% of population consumed foods belonging to this food group on the survey day, which is quite a significant number, part of population. After that, we move to the other graph, which is meant to help people who do not really understand, who are not very good in who are not experts in the field of food safety, to understand what is the 95th percentile of the population based on the distribution of consumption. So here in red we marked the consumption of the 5% of population that consume most of the particular food, and this 5% represents the high consumers of these nuts and seeds. So we see that among the high consumers of nuts and seeds, the average consumption is 193 gram. Well, it's 193 gram or more. So that's the food safety indicator. Now we will move to nutrition indicators. And the first indicator among the nutrition indicators is the one that indicates what is the share of population at risk of vitamin A inadequacy. At the moment, we have developed this indicator for vitamin A only, but we are looking into expanding it to cover iron, calcium, zinc, and folate. And this work will be done in the nearest future. Another type of nutrition indicator shows the sources of nutrients in the diet. So we have different nutrients such as calcium, folate, iron, and we have information on what is the contribution of different food groups to the total consumption of these micronutrients. So we see that vegetable, despite we saw before that they are not the most important food group in terms of the amount of vegetables consumed, they are the most important source of calcium in this diet, or iron, or in this case is cereals, but we have to be concerned about the fact that it does not correct for bioavailability of iron. The third type of nutrition indicator shows us the percentage contribution of different macronutrients to the total energy intake. And this indicator shows us the consumption and the contribution with reference to the recommendations from FAO and WHO. So we can see that in this population, the carbohydrates contribute 67% of energy, which is within the recommended numbers, which is 55 to 75%. But for example, the protein contributes more than recommended. The recommendation is 10 to 15%. Protein contributes 16%. So these are the indicators, the ready-to-use indicators in the form of infographics that I wanted to present to you. Now we will move to the download section. As Catherine said, we have developed this download section for users who would like to get the microdata and run the analysis themselves. So we have developed several filters in order to select for the users to easily select the data set of interest. These filters will be certainly useful once we will have much more data sets in the platform. Let's use at least one of them, which is filtering data sets by the food items that has been consumed by the population. So, for example, if we are interested only in data sets with processed fish, we can filter and we can see that only 3 out of the 5 data sets that we have contain processed fish, and we may be interested in downloading only the Burkina Faso one, and then there is this pop-up that is asking us about the basic information, and also verifying if we are not a robot. If we fill it in, then it will allow us to download the full data set with microdata, and also it will we will get a pop-up with the information about how to cite the data. So this is it about the platform. I will now give the floor back to Catherine.
Yes, thank you, Agnieszka. So first of all, I would like to say that just after this webinar, you are welcome to play yourself with the platform. You can see here the website, but you can also just with any search engine, if you write FAO gift, then the platform will come out, and you can just play with it. There is no login. It's completely open now. What I wanted to do now is to give a few examples of practical use of the platform, in particular at country level, because main target is really people who are working at country level. So let's imagine that I am an agricultural officer in Latin America, and the Ministry of Agriculture wants to promote a biofortified variety of a staple crop because it proved to be particularly productive in smallholder settings. So what I would like to know is the current level of consumption of the conventional variety of this crop. And I would like to know it in the different age and sex groups. And so what you can see on the slide is a screenshot where you can see the average consumption of root, tubers, and plantains. And within them, you can go and search for the staple crop you are interested in particular. And you can create this kind of graph in the different age and sex groups, and then make some calculation about what will be the intake of the nutrient for which you have fortified the crop. So this is one example. Now another example, let's imagine that I am a health officer in Africa, and based on some surveys in which biomarkers of vitamin A have been collected, I know that there is an unexpected high level of vitamin A deficiency in one area of the country in a woman. And the Ministry of Health is asking me advice on how to increase vitamin A intake through local foods, so not through supplements. So what you can see is a screenshot of the platform in this case. So it's among the nutrition indicators. You can see how much of vitamin A comes from the different food groups. And if you want to promote maybe in particular vegetables by going further into the disaggregation, you can observe that nearly all vitamin A from vegetables in this population is coming from amaranth leaves. And what can be extremely interesting in this case is maybe to go and look for some surveys which were performed in maybe another area of the country where women are not deficient in vitamin A, and check which foods were covering most of their intake. And then you can maybe decide to promote this kind of food in the area where there is more deficiency. The third case is in relation to food safety. So let's imagine that I am a food safety officer in Asia, and there has been an alert disseminated through the InfoSan network that there is an unexpected high level of aflatoxin in tree nuts and in peanuts, which are consumed in the country. And I need to know what is the risk related to this contamination. I need to quantify it in different population groups, and in particular in children who might be most exposed. So here you can see a screenshot of one of the indicators illustrated by Agnieszka, where you can understand that the 95th percentile of consumption of nuts in children, if you have selected only children, is 42 grams per day. So this number, you can then multiply it with the level of contamination and perform a risk assessment on exposure to aflatoxins in children through nuts, and this can be very important in order to take decisions. So these were three examples of use of the platform. I don't know why I'm not. The presentation is blocked. Now I can go. Okay, good. Now I just wanted to explain a little bit more about the work we have done and we do with data owners in order to share the data through the platform. So there is a process of harmonization of the data, which begins, of course, first of all, from identifying existing data worldwide, and this leads to the inventory map that Agnieszka has presented. Then we contact data owners and we check with them that their data set is in line with the basic quality criteria. And then there is a need to harmonize their data so that they are categorized and described with a common system, which is called FoodX2. And this process is very important and must be done in detail, and we need to interact a lot with data owners. And then at the end, of course, at the end of the process is the sharing of the data through the platform. A few words about FoodX2. So it was initially developed by the European Food Safety Authority, and the aim is to give the same code to foods which can be called in a different way in different parts of the world, even if it's in English, but which are the same food. So for example, in Denmark, you would call this fruit kaki, whereas in the USA, you would call it Japanese persimmon. And these two names are English names, and they differ, but they talk about the same food. So in FoodX2, this fruit is 801HQ. And this system allows also to provide further description of the food, so that you know exactly how the food was consumed based on the information available in the survey. So for example, there is an additional code to tell you if the food was consumed with a peel or without the peel. So the FoodX2 system has been upgraded so that now it can be used for any data set worldwide, and because we added foods which are not consumed in the European Union, like for example insects and flowers. It's also quite important to be able to use FoodX2 categorization system, not only for food consumption, but also for food composition data, because then the matching is much more, can be automatized much better, and this can save a lot of time and also increase the quality of the matching. So in order to use FoodX2, you need some training, because it's a rather comprehensive system. And of course, we provide training to the data owners so that they can learn how to use FoodX2. So here in this slide, just a few words on the achievements till now. So we have been quite active in identifying information needs through webinars, including also a webinar at the end of December with Anemia Network, and now these 3 webinars with the Sun Network. We are working a lot towards the harmonization of the information, and of course towards the sharing of data. So one important milestone for us was the launch of the GIST platform in November, because until last November the platform was accessible only through login, and now that all the legal issues have been solved and license to redistribute signed with data owners, the platform is completely open. So that was a very important milestone for us. Now we only need to fill it because we want to deserve the G of our acronym, because G stands for global. And of course, currently we have 5 data sets shared, 10 in the pipeline, but we want many more to be able to call the platform really GIFT. Here I'm just introducing the different departments of FAO and WHO which are involved in the development of the platform. So it's both food safety sector and nutrition, because we know that this kind of data, individual quantitative food consumption survey, are very useful both for people working in the area of food safety and in the area of nutrition. Here you can see the most important collaboration that we have. So first of all, collaboration with key data owners like CGIR, who shared, it was Harvest Plus, who shared 3 data sets with us since the beginning of the project. We collaborate also with Tufts University through the Index project funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. and also with the Global Dietary Database, which is, let's call a kind of sister initiative with whom we develop common protocols and share information. And the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation, who use also this kind of data in relation to the global burden of disease. And of course, a very, very important collaboration is with the European Food Safety Authority, EFSA, who supports us a lot in the training on FoodX2. So from some recent publication, we really feel that with this tool, we are answering an important need. So you can see here a recent publication of the Global Panel on Agriculture and Food Systems for Nutrition, in which one of the research priority identified was the need for more and better data on the diet. And both Global Dietary Database Initiative and the FAO GIFT Initiative were identified as very important to support. And also in this publication in Nature in 2016, the FAO GIFT platform was mentioned as an important initiative to be supported. So our job is really about making individual food consumption data more available. And we do this through harmonizing and through sharing. And in order to reach this goal, what we want to do is to create a snowball effect. And it's a dream, but we have some reasonable chances to reach it, and we could learn from the experience at EU level in the European Union, where it was clear that the more member states would share the data, the more the other ones would feel it's important to share the data. So what we want to do is to create a snowball effect, and we hope we will have your support towards this. And I just want to conclude with this slide in order to introduce the rest of the FAO WHO team. So today it's Agnieszka Bajerczak and me, Catherine Leclerc, in this webinar. But there will be other webinars involving the rest of the team in French and in Spanish. So that's Pauline Allemand, who has been working for 3 years on this tool, and Victoria Padula de Quadros, who joined us 1 year ago. So thank you for your attention, and now I think I give back the floor to Lindsay.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you very much, both to Catherine and Agnieszka, for the excellent presentation. We will now open up the floor for questions. We've received a number of questions, which our speakers will address during the next 30 minutes or so. We invite you to continue typing in your questions into the chat box, and we will try our best to cover as many of the questions as possible during the Q&A before wrapping up today's webinar. The first question that we'll start with, I'm going to direct towards Catherine, and of course, you and Agnieszka decide who is best placed to answer. The first question is, what are the quality criteria for the data set to be included?
Okay, thank you very much. So this is nearly always the first question which is asked to us. So I would like first of all to say that with this platform, we first of all want to serve the most needy countries. And these countries are low and lower middle income countries. And very often they don't have nationwide surveys. They have small scale surveys. And they are not always top quality in terms of level of disaggregation. But often these are the only data available. So for this reason, we decided to have a very inclusive criteria. And so, for example, we accept data sets even with only 100 subjects. And in terms of disaggregation, even just 50 food categories would be sufficient to create nutrient indicators. What we do is that we describe very well the quality of the survey so that there is no risk of misinterpretation of the data. And so it's important when you use a platform to, when you use some data, to look very well at the metadata to see which are the limitations of the survey. So that you don't go to, it doesn't lead to a misinterpretation. I hope I answered the question.
That was perfect. Thank you so much. And we'll just move right along to the second question, which I'm also going to direct to you, Catherine. What if a nutrition officer wants to compare the iron intake for children, an example, between Burkina Faso and Uganda? Is it possible to compare 2 or more data sets available in the platform from different countries?
Okay, so currently, if you want to create indicators from Burkina Faso and Uganda, you would need to do this separately, first on one country and then on the other. And you would need to make some screenshots and compare them yourself. We are going to further develop the platform so that it will be more user-friendly to do this kind of comparison. However, we will put some important warnings because, of course, even if data have been harmonized in terms of food categories, it doesn't mean that they are really comparable because the methodology can be very different. Maybe the food composition data that have been used in the 2 countries are different, and not because necessarily the foods were different, but just because the availability of the information was different. So it's very important to be very careful when comparing data which have been collected with different methodologies. And we will make this very clear as warnings in the platform when it will be more user-friendly to do this comparison.
Thank you very much, Catherine. I think that was a great explanation on maybe some of the challenges with comparing data sets that have different methodologies. We're going to move on to our third question, which comes from the field. And Catherine, I'm going to direct this to you. The question is, does the pilot tool work with already existing data or studies can be launched to collect occurrence data? If the former is feasible, what are the potential sources of funding?
Okay, so the platform works only with existing data. Existing data on food consumption. So in the question you mentioned occurrence data. I don't know, usually we use this term to talk about a level of contamination in food. So the platform doesn't deal with this data. It's only about food consumption and nutrient intake. If you want to combine food consumption with occurrence data, you need to do this outside the platform, either by downloading the microdata or by taking the indicators, for example, of mean or 95th percentile. The issue of potential sources of funding, I don't know exactly what it's the question. I mean, we are not funding surveys to fill the platform, but we collaborate with institutions which fund this kind of survey. And we sometimes give them technical support to be sure that the data are of high quality, harmonized, and possibly use food exclusion categorization since the collection.
Thank you so much for that explanation on the food consumption data and occurrence data, and maybe the difficulties in combining them within the platform. We'll move on to the next question, which I'm going to direct to Agnieszka. It's related to when you were reviewing the platform the figure of deficiencies seemed to have figures of both men and women, but only women were highlighted as deficient. Does that mean only women are deficient, or they are the only ones with data?
Thank you. I shared the screen so we can look at this indicator once again and understand the confusion. Actually, yes, to visualize this indicator, we use a dashboard that contains both figures of men and women. It is not related to the population that was covered by the survey, or that was used to calculate this indicator. It's just a dashboard, and it does not have more meaning than the colors. I think in the next development stage of the platform, we will intend to synchronize the dashboard and with the population of interest that has been selected by the user. At the moment, the only number that indicates anything, or the only thing that indicates anything on this dashboard, is the percentage of population at risk, and the population refers to this population pre-selected within the survey.
Thank you, Agnieszka. That was a very clear explanation, and I think the next iteration, as you mentioned, that would be very interesting to see it reflect the categories selected. On to the next question from the field. It's directed towards Catherine. We were asked, would it be possible to add a correction factor estimating the bioavailability of calcium, iron, and zinc based on other dietary components in the diet, for example, phytate, vitamin C, animal flesh, etc. Otherwise, plant foods are portrayed as having a much higher contribution of these minerals than are actually absorbed.
Yes, this is extremely true and important. And in fact, in the current version of the platform, it's not the case. And we mention it clearly in the methodology section. We are now actually writing a proposal to further develop the platform in addition to further feeding it. And this is exactly what we are going to do. We will let the end user insert information, estimate of the bioavailability of the nutrient in order to correct the data. In the future, it would be great, but this is not for tomorrow. If in the data set there is even information on phytate or vitamin C, to do an internal estimate of bioavailability from the platform itself, but this is not going to be very soon. In the meanwhile, there will be some kind of standard bioavailability which can be chosen by the end user so that the estimates are corrected. So thank you. This is really a very important question.
We agree. I think it's a very interesting question, and it's also good to know that in the current platform it's not possible, but that you guys are writing a proposal to be able to address this. I think everybody will be quite excited to see that. I'm going to move on to the next question, and this is for Agnieszka. And it might relate back to a previous question that was asked. It would be possible to generate aggregated analytics for several countries, for example, for a region.
Well, that would be definitely very interesting, and it's very tempting to do so. However, we are using data that has been collected by using different methods and by different institutions in different time, so they are not really comparable. There is an interesting project in EFSA, European Food Safety Authority, which is called EU Menu, which is where the same methodology of data collection has been introduced in various countries, and the data collected using these harmonized methodologies can be compared across the countries and across the regions. But the data we are talking about, unfortunately, cannot serve for this purpose. Thank you.
Thank you for that clear explanation. And I think that we'll move into the next question, which again might relate to what you just answered, although we have this directed towards Catherine. This is a three-part question, and so I will just present each part as a separate question. The first question is, how is food consumption data standardized across the country? Catherine?
Okay, so I'm not sure what is meant exactly by across the country, but the process of standardization is a post-harmonization through mapping the food list, which was used during the survey with the full description of each food. We map it to FoodX2 description and categorization system. And then, so the microdata that you can download from the platform is categorized with FoodX2.
Okay, thank you so much. The second part of this question, which I also think is very interesting, there's clarification requested on how are complex meals handled and broken into individual food groups.
Yes, this is very important, and it's a hard part of the work. So, well, the issue is not so much complex meals, because in quantitative individual food consumption surveys, usually for each meal you have the different food consumed as different lines, and that's easy. The issue is about complex recipes. Because in some cases, the recipe are available as raw ingredients, and in some cases they are available as cooked ingredients. And not always the data owner has developed or used some yield factors to move from raw to cooked and vice versa, or nutrient retention factors to assess correctly the content of nutrient in the food as consumed. So actually what we do is that we give technical support to the data owner in case the recipes have not been disaggregated in such a way that it's possible to have both raw and cooked weight of the food. So again, in the microdata that you can download from the platform, you have two different columns, one for raw ingredients, one for cooked ingredients. And in addition, of course, you can download the recipe itself. So the quantity for the recipe, the quantity for the different food ingredients, raw and cooked.
Thank you for the very clear explanation, Catherine. I think follow-up to this, there was clarification requested on how food safety can be defined by quantity of food consumed unless it's linked to a specific hazard that has already been mapped out or quantified, for example, aflatoxin.
Yes, so I already in part answered to this question before, to say that so this platform is to share quantitative individual food consumption data. In addition, in the area of nutrition, we share nutrient intakes assessed by the data owners. In the future, we plan also to give the possibility to have an internal combination with some good quality food composition data inside the platform, but currently the nutrient intake is the one assessed by the data owner. Whereas in relation to food safety, the platform doesn't provide estimate of dietary exposure to food chemicals. It only provides the quantitative information on some specific items or food groups, so that externally from the platform you can combine them with your own occurrence data. So what we're working on currently is to create some food groups which are of particular interest to food safety, because currently the food groups that you see, they are more kind of nutrition-led. And we are now creating some food groups which are more food safety led. Don't know if Agnieszka, you want to talk about this, because it's Agnieszka who is working on this with the secretariats of JECFA and GMPR, which are two FAO WHO committees working on risk assessment.
Thank you, Catherine. I can only complement by saying that we are actually developing groups, food groups that target contamination of like particular contaminants like aflatoxins or methylmercury or other heavy metals, and this will allow us to produce outputs based on the predefined risk that we can find in particular food groups. Yeah.
Thank you both for that explanation. I think we'll move on to the next question, which is for Agnieszka also. With regard to nutrition indicators, do you know when would the tool be able to present iron consumption?
Iron consumption, it indicates iron, the intake of iron. I'm gonna use the screen to show it to you once again. So in the tool you can find already the information about the contribution of different food groups to the total intake of iron. You can see that for this population the total intake of iron is 22 milligrams. It's not corrected for the bioavailability of iron, is the total iron intake. What is not now possible to see is the percentage of population of risk of iron inadequacy. This we will work on probably within the next 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I guess in regard to that question also, you said you were going to work on it in the next 2 years. Would it show the different, when you have the population at risk, would it be by different groups also, just to kind of add on to it?
Yes, the tool will also will always show data disaggregated by sex and age, and it's going to be fully flexible for the user to select the population of interest within the survey that is available.
Okay, Catherine, yeah. I would like to complement this also to explain a bit more about our plans. So actually what we aim at in the next 4 years, we want to fill the platform with microdata and of course indicators from 50 data sets, 50, worldwide, with a particular focus on low and middle income countries, but with data sets from the different regions. So this is our first aim. And during the same 4 years, we are also going to further develop the platform with a certain number of features that we have already mentioned, like developing the indicator of inadequacy for more nutrients and adding the possibility to set the bioavailability indicator and many other features. So these are our plans in the next 4 years, but the first objective is really to fill it with more data sets, and so that in the meanwhile, even if the indicator is not yet available, people can download the microdata, and with the microdata they can make themselves their own estimate of iron deficiency here.
Thank you so much for that clarification. I think also kind of further to this line of inquiry, we had one other question for Agnieszka. With regard to nutrition indicators, it does not allow to see the nutrient intake of children, let's say 6 to 59 months or 6 to 24 months. Is this going to be addressed in a future iteration of the platform?
Actually, it does allow. So here, where you pre-select where you select the population of interest, you can change age from year to month, and you can select the population of children 6 to 24 years months. Sorry. So, well, in this particular data set, there is no information, there is no data on children. That's why it says no data to display. But in other data sets, when this data is available, it can be selected using this selector. Thank you.
So, for example, I'm adding also to this. Currently, we have in the platform 4 small-scale data sets in which there are women of reproductive age and children, and one data set which covers the whole population, which is Laos. So, all the participants to the platform, to the webinar, are really welcome at the end of the webinar to play and try it. And of course, if you have any issue, contact us. Lindsay, we cannot hear you anymore.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, I was having a bit of technical difficulty. Yeah, no, thank you very much for, I think, that explanation and kind of walking us through in a bit more detail so that we can see the full capabilities of the platform. I think it's really useful. The next question we have is also for Agnieszka. And the question is it possible to search the food consumption data by poverty profiles? This could be beneficial in nutrition assessment, geographic targeting, and to address the issues for the poorest quintile or other criteria. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Yes, that would be very interesting to proceed by this kind of indicators, but the truth is that not all the data sets contain them. That's one problem, and another problem is that harmonization of this poverty profile across different data sets. That's why we are not producing indicators disaggregated by any socioeconomical indicators. But we allow this kind of data to be included in the data file, so the users, they can download it, download microdata, and if the information necessary for this kind of analysis is there, provided by the data owner, then the user can run the analysis by themselves. Thank you.
Thank you for that explanation in regards to being able to download the data sets ourselves and to be able to analyze the microdata to maybe answer some of these more detailed questions. The next question is for Catherine. Is it possible to use the databases with our own food tables to evaluate micronutrient composition?
Yes, of course, but outside the platform. So currently, the indicators which are created in the section on nutrition are based on the estimate of nutrient intake by the data owner. But in the microdata which are shared with us to do this are microdata where for each line you have the time of consumption, the food which was consumed, the quantity of the food consumed, raw and cooked, and the nutrient content of the food estimated by the data owner. When you download the data set, you can perfectly use only the food consumption, the quantities of food, and make the link with other tables of food composition that you have, and if you think that you can make a better link, or if there has been some new release of better food composition data.
Thank you very much for that explanation. We'll move on to the next question. It's for Agnieszka. If you recode similar foods into one code, does that mean that you use the same nutrient values? What about differences in some nutrients by where it's grown?
Okay, thank you for the question, because it's an important question regarding the food composition. To date in our database, and I think in the future we'll continue this way, we only use the food composition data provided by the data owner. So the coding of a food does not affect the matching with food composition, because it's done at the level of the data set by the person who did the study. I think, yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. That was very clear and well understood. The next question is for Catherine, and I think this is a really interesting question also. What about, for the nutrition section, adding a component that incorporates fortification and supplementation policies? This way, the estimates of inadequate intake and thus risk of deficiency will be more accurate.
Okay, so currently, if we have a data set in which it was possible to distinguish between foods which were fortified or not fortified, and in which information was collected on the intake of supplements, it means that from this data set, the information disseminated by the platform takes this into consideration. Because, of course, you would have the intake of the micronutrient coming from fortified foods and from supplements as an output. I suppose that what the participant wanted to know is if in the data set this information is not available, maybe we could add it through the platform, and maybe make some scenarios, like we have a data set of consumption of, let's say, some mice, and it was not at that time known if it was fortified or not, but we are aware that all mice is now fortified. Then the platform could correct the estimate with this information. So, of course, this would be an important and very interesting development of the platform. It's a suggestion we already received from other end users. We are considering it, but our first objective now is to deal with the issue of bioavailability, and I think this will be the second one just after.
Thank you so much, Catherine. I just want to take a moment to say we have about 10 minutes left for questions. And so we can probably take 2 to 3 more questions at this point. So moving on to the next question. It's coming from the field, and it's related to the indicator section. So I think that the age and sex of the population of the survey should be displayed in the indicator section, when the survey data are for a very small subgroup in particular, such as 2 to 4-year-olds only. The specific example I'm thinking about is Harvest Plus Bangladesh Biofortified Rice Project, the Baseline Dietary Survey. And this is for Agnieszka.
Okay, it's Catherine answering. So you are perfectly right, and actually this is really something that we are doing right now. We are modifying the platform so that any infographic coming out, it will be very clear which was the population selected to create it. because this way there is no risk that you can make a screenshot and then forget which was the population selected. And something else that we will do is also to put a warning if by selecting age and sex you retrieved a very small number of subjects and therefore there is a high uncertainty on the output, then there will be a clear warning on the infographic again. So it's, thank you for this question because it's something very important, but we are going to solve it very soon.
Thank you so much, Catherine. We'll move on to our second to last question. This is for Agnieszka. Let's say I'm a program manager from one state of India and I'm doing a desk review on the diets among women of reproductive age in the region. How can this tool help me now, and how do you see this tool helping me later, down the road in particular, if enough data are entered into the system?
Thank you very much for the question. So, first of all, the person could check whether the data on individual food consumption for this particular state of India exists, and this the person will do through the data sources section of the platform. And if such data exists and is available for the platform, then the platform can be a very rich source of information for this kind of person looking for this kind of answers. So first of all, the consumption data can indicate the quality of the diet and the composition of the diet. The nutrient sources in the diet can also help the person to understand which foods are underutilized or which foods could be promoted in order to improve the nutritional status of the population. The macronutrient composition of the diet that is presented also can indicate which foods could be promoted or discouraged or in the diet of this population. What are the possible issues in this population? And also the platform indicates the risk of nutrient inadequacy, which is an important information for on the nutritional status of people. So I think the platform has a great potential to help such a program manager in his work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Agnieszka. And there's just this one final question that I'm going to pose to you again. One participant has noted that their computer will not open the map. And is there a list version with the color coding?
No, you cannot download anywhere from the platform this list, but thank you for the suggestion. We are actually, Catherine is telling me that we are actually planning to include this feature in the very soon in the platform, that the users will be able to download the list of identified surveys. What I would suggest to the user is to change the browsers. Perhaps in Google Chrome it will work better. The browser is tested for sure for Google Chrome, and also it should be working in an Internet Explorer, but the second browser can make problems.
Okay, well noted. Thank you guys so much for the rich question and answer session. The UN Network really wants to help disseminate the FAO WHO GIFT tool. We've done this through collaborating on this webinar. We've also profiled the tool on our e-communication and disseminated it to UN Network colleagues worldwide. And we're also on standby to liaise with these country and regional colleagues and to make connections back to the FAO WHO GIFT team. Now I'd like to invite Catherine to say a few concluding remarks about the FAO WHO GIFT tool.
Yes, thank you very, very much. This was extremely useful, and the content of the question was such of high quality, so I think that the participants who were around the table are really people who know what we are talking about, and they express very clearly their needs, and we really hope to answer to these needs more and more. You mentioned that UN Network wants to help us, and it's already a great help. What I would like to add is, first of all, if you had some more questions and you didn't have the time to ask it, please send it to us. On the PowerPoint presentation, you can see our email, which is FAO-whogift@fao.org. Then, if you know while a country and its surveys, please go to the map and check if the survey is there, and if it's not, again, write to us, and we will be pleased to complement the map. If you are a data owner, contact us so that we can check if you would like to share the data with us. And of course, if you are an institution who could plan to collect this kind of data, our suggestion would be to avoid food frequency surveys, which cannot be repurposed, and try and collect quantitative data through 24 recall or records, maybe using the tools that have been developed maybe in another country or in other surveys of your country. And if possible, collect this data since the beginning with FoodX2, because it will make it much more easy to compare your data with those of other countries. And last suggestion, when you plan the survey, already plan to be able to share it from a legal point of view, because it's not always easy, especially if you do a survey in collaboration with other partners. So it's important in the beginning to think if you want to share the data as microdata or not at the end. So this was a quite lengthy conclusion in terms of request. And now I would just like to say that we will consider a lot the feedback you will give to us in order to develop the platform so that it's as useful as possible. And we are pleased to have this plans to further develop and fill it in the next 4 years. And so this is the right timing to support us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Catherine and Agnieszka, for the insightful webinar about the new FAO WHO GIFT tool. We'd now like to invite participants to take a 4 to 5 minutes to fill out an assessment of this seminar and of the FAO WHO GIFT platform. The team will take your feedback into account as FAO WHO GIFT continues to evolve. The assessment link should now be in the chat box. Let me just double check. It's there, perfect. And then a special thanks to Erin at SecureNutrition and to my colleague Holly Seduto for coordinating and making this webinar possible. The recording and presentation slides will be available on the event webpage within the SecureNutrition platform should you wish to refer to those materials at a later date. Please bear in mind that this webinar will be conducted in Spanish on 12th of March from 11:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Time, and in French on the 13th of March from 10:30 a.m. to 12 noon Eastern Time. Thank you again for tuning in today, and have a wonderful evening. Bye.
Bye-bye.